All right, greetings, brothers and sisters. Tonight is December 5th, 2023. This is our Dr. Julius Nairi, CBPM, Division 421 leadership course. We'll be going over the Message to the People, Course of African Philosophy, authored by the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Tonight, we'll be going over the questions from the previous lesson 7. Who remembers the title of lesson 7?
Seven.
9, I'm sorry, lesson 9. I don't know why I'm saying 7. Previous lesson 9. What was the title of that?
Diplomacy.
Diplomacy. So we'll be going over questions from diplomacy, and we'll be going over the reading for economy. As always, first thing we do when we start our meetings, pledge to the UNIA flag. It is commonly known, the red, black, and green flag. We know it as the UNIA flag. If you would, please come off mute. Say along with me. Put your black fists in the air. I got to start this live. 1 second. I got to get our Facebook going. Communication, form of propaganda. All right, pledge. Well, I'll start. Please say along with me. I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security.
It's not showing.
Okay, yeah, okay. You're supposed to my memory.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I thought it was showing. All right. We'll start over. Pledge to the UNIA flag. I commit my body, mind,
and spirit to the protection, defense, and security
of the red,
black, and green.
I dedicate my life
to the
redemption of
Mother Africa
and the
liberation
of her scattered black
children.
I
accept for myself and my descendants
the
teachings
of
universal African nationalism, and I promise that
our
our
children
children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people,
in order
that our struggle will neither falter nor fail until all Black people are free and united through one God, one aim, and one destiny.
Race first.
Race first.
Who has not read the oath thus far? Has everyone read the oath? Attorney Imhotep, I know we tried last week. We had some issues. Brother Art, have you read the oath?
No, I don't think I have.
Would you please do us the honor?
Okay. I, Art Costley, do solemnly swear before the Almighty God that I have entered upon the instructions of the African School of Philosophy conducted by Marcus Garvey for no other purpose than to serve the Negro race through the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, of which he is President General, and that I shall not use the knowledge so gained to promote or advance the interests of any other organization. I shall confine myself always to the service of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and work within the framework of the organization for any promotion I may desire for the improvement of my race. I shall never divulge or reveal any of the lessons I receive to anyone, and shall never allow the lessons or records thereof fall into the hands of anyone, and shall safeguard the same with my life from falling into the hands of other races. I shall always use all my energy and ability to advance the interests of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and shall never be in rebellion against it. And this is, I swear myself, my honor, my sacred trust, and shall fail this oath. May the just reward be meted out to me. So help me God. Race first.
Race first. Thank you, brother Art. Excellent job.
Race first.
Race first.
I did have a question. I hope y'all didn't see it. These are actually questions for upcoming lessons. We had one of my favorite questions from these lessons is the value of knowledge. Do you remember what Garvey says the value of knowledge is? What is the value of knowledge? That was one of the earlier lessons. Maybe that's got to be lesson 1.
Something we can impart to our generation.
The value of knowledge is something that we can impart to our generation.
Onto the next generation.
How do we do that? Garvey has a practical quote, says the value of knowledge is something. What is the value of knowledge? And I'm asking that for a particular reason. We're getting, we're approaching halfway through the lessons. We're acquiring all of this knowledge. What is the value of the knowledge that we are obtaining?
To make us Marcus Garvey personified.
That's the quote. Yes. Yes. And how do we do that with this knowledge that we're given?
Oh, shoot. Okay, I got it, President. The value of knowledge is to use it.
That's it right there. That's what I was looking for. The value of knowledge is to use it. Page 6. So I'm putting more responsibility on us. And again, this is not a novel. This is not a nonfiction book. This is not an autobiography. This is Marcus Garvey's course of African philosophy. It consists of 22 written lessons and over 20 lessons committed to memory. It's a directive. It is a, as the editor said, this is the Garvey's last political will and testament. So these are directives. These are not just facts to memorize and regurgitate, but these are lessons, the exemplary lessons. Garvey, as we go through these lessons, our behavior, our interactions with our community should change. Our attitude towards ourselves and our race and our people should change. So that's something we have to keep in mind. And I'm making sure, anyone that goes through these lessons with me, we keep in mind that the value of this knowledge is to use it and to apply it.
It's for us to initrate.
For us to what? What's that?
Initrate. That's a word that Bob Marley used.
Initrate?
Yeah.
I don't know what that one is. You're gonna have to spell that one for me. I gotta look that up.
I think it's INITRATE. It's probably a made-up word, but he used that word in a song.
Oh wow, it's a made-up word.
It's like instead of saying understand, overstand, concentrate, initrate.
Got you. Interesting. Any questions before we get started?
Yes, President. Greetings, family. President, could you repeat for the membership the 42 lessons again? You said 20 are written and 22. Would you could say it again?
There were 22 written lessons. So there's actually two different areas where this is documented. One comes from Charles L. James and one comes from Tony Martin. But Tony Martin tells us that Charles L. James said that there were 22 written lessons and the other 20 lessons were committed to memory. Tony Martin was of the opinion, he said that there were 22 written lessons and over 20 lessons that were committed to memory. So that's the facts. As far as, you know, which one is absolutely true, I'm not sure. I would lean more towards Charles L. James, as he's, you know, the official individual that took the course from Garvey. But at the end of the day, this book consists of the 22 written lessons. This is something that we talked about in the beginning. There's 22 written lessons, but there's over 20 lessons that were committed to memory. That's, yeah. Questions, comments on that? Let's see. I don't know how hard it would be for me to find that.
And we don't know what lessons were committed to memory, right?
I was searching for memory.
There's some discussion. Oh my goodness, this is a bad idea. 20, yeah, that's not a good idea. Well, getting close on them.
Use the word memory.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, something's not right. Something is not right. Let's see. Okay, let's see. 1 second. Y'all can see what I'm doing. It's okay. But I was using an older file. I don't know if y'all noticed the date. This is last year, because I was looking for a particular graphic, but it's not there. But we're still going to use the questions from that presentation. All right, might have to come back to this for the sake of time. Let's see where my first question is at. Oh, this is a bad one too. 10, no, wait, 10, 20, 10, 17 is not bad. Not bad. How many lessons, subjects were total, difference in the lessons. So over 42 subjects, written and unwritten. I don't have the exact page, but it's somewhere between the page XII, like 12 and 16. That's one of that's one area where it talks about it. How many lessons? I just went to the text. This is a good lesson. Like, you know, we should always refer to the primary. All right, what happened? I think I'm doing too much.
XII had it. That's the only thing I saw. He said like that's where he's talking about how much they guard it. Yeah.
Wouldn't let me like, okay, there we go. So XI, yeah. So this is Charles L. James. He said, my classmates all agree that I was the leader of the first class School of African Philosophy charged with guarding the written course with our lives. The unwritten course was also to be engraved on the tablets of our memory as I write so the unwritten course. Let me see. I know it's a 40 out there. What? There we go. The course described by Garvey. So this is I'm pretty sure this is what's his name? Tony Martin. The course described by Garvey as a most rigid system of training covered over 42 subjects. So over 42 subjects. Much of it remained unwritten, for it was the nature of a confidential in-house affair. Even the 22 written lessons reproduced here were guarded jealously from indiscriminate circulation. So that's where it comes from. And this is common knowledge amongst individuals that have gone through the course. You know, that's one of the gotcha questions. You know, people that say they've read the course, they've gone through the course. That's one of the first questions I ask. How many lessons are there? And if they say 22, it's just okay. All right, I understand. We should know, the source. This is primary information. You can't really beat the primary. Any questions, Lady President? 8:33.
Thank you, President.
No problem. Okay. Get back. Any other questions before we get started? I lost my slide. I don't know what slide I was on. November 22nd. Lesson 6. There we go. All right. This us. All right. If we are ready, it's 8:34. We will start the questions for this evening. And the questions from lesson 7. So first question, from Garvey's perspective, what is diplomacy? How does Garvey define diplomacy? Brother Art, what you think?
I think diplomacy is a communication between two governments.
I like that. I like that. Anyone want to add? Pretty much spot on. I think Garvey used the word nations, but the idea is what I'm looking for. You know, everything doesn't have to be a quote unquote, exactly as Garvey wrote it. But yes, the sentiment. So
It says diplomacy is the relationship that nations use to conduct their communications or approach in dealing with matters of the state and to affect the relationship of a certain nature between them.
Yes. I was about to say the relationship between them, but yes, relationship between nations. And I know this is small, bear with me, but you hear what I'm saying. We know what the question is. The main thing, everyone should have this text. Hopefully you got the text. Hopefully you got pen and outline, underline certain concepts. Again, these are the things that are important. The definition of terms. So as Lady President said, as Brother Art summarized, a relationship between governments or a relationship between nations is how I like to sum it up. Word used to express the peculiar relationship between nations. That's diplomacy. It is the relationship that nations use to conduct their communications or approach in dealing with matters of state. The thoughtful and careful consideration of words and ideas expressed. But again, the relationship between nations, that's diplomacy. Questions, comments? I need some water so bad.
Please don't deprive yourself of water.
What lesson is that? That talked about drinking water. What lesson reminded us to drink water?
Was it lesson 2? Was it leadership?
No, it was not leadership.
Elocution.
Elocution, yes. Garvey was talking about to be able to give speeches for hours. We should sip water. All right, great job, Sister Diane. Any questions, comments before we proceed? We are way behind. I'm gonna just go ahead and keep going. If you got questions, write them down. We will address it at the end. Number 2, what are 2 things that Garvey says that, quote, we must first be, end quote, in order to be a diplomat? What must we first be before we can be a diplomat? I remember this. This was a tough one to remember. What must we first be before we can be a diplomat?
He said you must first be a very skillful thinker and a psychologist.
Yes, psychologist was the word. Skillful thinker, I believe, it's obviously there. Yes. So a very skillful thinker and psychologist in order to be a diplomat. So that's from the text. We're talking about diplomacy. Diplomacy is carried out through individuals. Those individuals are known as diplomats. We, as leaders of the UNIA, in effect, we become diplomats of the UNIA. That's what people don't really understand in regards to organizations. When you become a representative of an organization, you are, in a sense, a diplomat. So Garvey's laying a foundation for, what we have to do as representatives and what we must be, as representatives. Questions, comments? Number 3, what must diplomats be able to do to safeguard and protect himself and the interest he represents? In order to protect himself or herself and the interests that they represent, what must the diplomat do? What must the diplomat do to safeguard and protect himself and the interests they represent?
Form alliances with officials or get to know officials, government officials.
You gotta be able to predict.
Brother Eric sounds like he's on it. Predict. What you got to predict? Mike, finish that up.
Predict the future. You got to be able to understand what other people could be thinking at the exact same time in different circumstances, but at the same time.
Absolutely. Garvey says, read other people's minds and intentions. So again, this is just 3 questions, and this is a very intense. This whole book is like this, honestly, and I should have been approaching it that way, but it's something that comes with development. But these lessons are very intense, and we should approach them carefully, so to say, because once you understand it, you really, you can go back for a refresher, and you should go back for a refresher, but you have a clear understanding of what's being communicated, what Garvey wants us to understand when he says these terms. So as we said, diplomacy and diplomats. So in order to safeguard and protect ourselves and the interests that we represent, we must be able to read other people's minds and intentions. Why is that? Why must we be able to read other people's minds and intentions in its simplest explanation? Okay, we're behind on time, but as representatives, no matter what anybody says, this world that we live in is a competition of resources, and we are representing our society, and that's something that I told y'all I was going to give y'all a pictorial of. I'm still working on it, but as we come together, as we come together as an organized group of mankind, and we form a society, now we have to represent this society and say, hey, we need these resources. We need, food, water, shelter, gasoline, whatever it may be. But we need our share. So we have to interact with other individuals in the world. And when we're doing that, from a race first standpoint, which Garvey teaches us and remind us, we're dealing with other races, nations, and societies that look at themselves or their society as race first. So they're trying to get as much as they can for their people, and we're out trying to get as much as we can for our people. But we have to understand that. And diplomacy is a very tricky thing. It's something that I've always shunned or stayed away from. Politics and politicians and how they have to behave and how they have to act. Garvey gives me a little bit of a better understanding as to why that is. Any questions, comments? But we have to be able to read other people's minds and intentions. We have to know what other people are thinking, what they're fighting for, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and how we can still work to obtain what we need for our people, because they're fighting to get what they want for their people, and if they get more, they're not going to be mad about it. But if it affects us and it causes us to get less, it's a problem. So we have to have strong diplomats that understand, that these other groups and societies are fighting for themselves. Why must a diplomat always give expressions that carry double meaning? Why must a diplomat always give expressions that carry double meaning?
He never exposes. He always leaves a loophole for escape.
Always leaves a loophole for escape. What was Garvey communicating, or what was he trying to communicate there? Anyone?
He said so that if the interpretation is dangerous to an affecting a good relationship, he can always fall back and say it was not intended that way.
Yes. So even if it is as simple as, and this is now I don't want to give a bad example, but I'm gonna give it anyway. Even if it is as simple as as we said, water. Let's use water for a simple example. We say, hey, we need certain 100,000 gallons of water, at a certain amount of time, and that we don't think how that may affect someone else. Or another group of society, and it may cause some type of tension. And they say, hey, what about we can't get 20, and then now that's a bad example. But
You're
but
good,
what
President. Go ahead. Use it.
what I was going is you can take it, so I guess I shouldn't have used the actual value of 100,000, but you need a lot of water. And someone else says, hey, we need some, and then you can say, oh, well, I didn't mean I need all the water. I just need this for my people. But that was a bad example, terrible example. But don't.
That was a good one. You chose a finite. You chose something that comes back, but it's still misses. That was a good one. That was a good one.
I'm trying to think of more. A more.
Think about it with land. Think about it with land. Land doesn't come back. So think about that
one. We'll come back to it. But You're absolutely right. If one expression is dangerous to the effect of affecting a good relationship. So again, we're trying to do the best that we can for ourselves and get the most resources that we can for our society. That's what this thing is about. No matter what group or anything is telling you, whether it's a church or a business, everybody's fighting for resources. And we're in that fight as well. But we feel that we can maintain and these resources in a much more righteous way than has been done in the past. But if one expression is dangerous to the effect of affecting a good relationship. So as I said, it's about relationships. We want to do, and we have to do what we have to do to maintain and survive. But beyond maintenance and survival, we have to maintain good relationships. We don't want to create enemies unintentionally. So yeah, he can say it was not intended that way. So we just got to be careful about how we talk, being definitive about certain things. Garvey he tells us not to be so definitive if we don't have to, basically. Questions, comments? All right. Next question. What should we feed our opponent in order to get good results? What should we feed our opponent in order to get good results?
Feed your opponent with good words that mean nothing, and then when you come down to the business part, hold your ground, but still use good and pleasant words to win.
Yes, sir. Feed them with good words that mean nothing. Win them with a perfect smile in the most gentle manner. Diplomacy. It's about relationships. We have to know what's important, and we also have to know what's meaningless. So I think last time we talked about this. Feed your opponent good words that mean nothing. So just compliment them on something that is meaningless. So your shoes are nice, your hair is whatever, your shirt, I like that shirt, but these things mean nothing, they cost nothing, and they don't really have to be true, which is something we'll touch on a little bit later. But from a diplomacy standpoint, I think the hidden lesson, we talk about hidden lessons, diplomacy is really talking about relationships. So doing what we have to do to maintain a good relationship while we're doing what's best for our society as we represent our society. Sometimes people get too wrapped up in the diplomacy. They forget that they're representing a certain society, and they just become diplomats of themselves. But all right. Questions, comments? That's why we have to be careful with this lesson. We have to build, this lesson builds upon the previous lessons, specifically lesson 3, the aims and objects of the UNIA. Number 6, what is said to turn away wrath? What is said to turn away wrath?
A soft answer.
A soft answer?
Yes.
He says that?
I think. I'm guessing. I'm sorry.
He said a kind word.
I know it was kindness. I think it was a smile as well. Smile and a kind word, but diplomacy, relationships, work in the room, charisma. That's what this lesson is about. We've established leadership. We've established elocution. We've established character. Now it's time to work the room. So that's what this is about. That's what diplomacy is about. How we interact with other nations, other organizations, other societies. Questions, comments? So kindness. We should approach with kindness. Garvey has a whole lesson on kindness towards the end of the text, but he touches on kindness here as well from a diplomacy standpoint. All right, next question. If a man is going to kill you by threatening you, what does Garvey say that it is best to do?
He was saying that the way that you respond could end up getting you killed.
Yes, ma'am. So how does he say that we should respond if someone says they're about to kill us? Someone threatens that they're about to kill you. This is Garvey. Obviously, it's not my opinion, but he does say this in the text.
Smile.
Smile. That's what I'm looking for. Smile with him. If a man threatens you that he's going to kill you, smile with him. Sister Diane, you want to read that? Or should I read that from the text myself?
I was just going from memory. I wasn't looking at it. I have to find what page it's on.
I got you. I got it.
It says, even if a man is going to kill you by threatening you, it is best to smile with him before he actually carries out the intention, so as to prevent him from doing so by showing him a smile rather than to suggest the gravity of your indignation, which will cause him to think that you are going to kill him first.
Yes, you don't have to finish it, but yes. Any questions, comments before I expound upon this? Or do I need to expound upon this?
Yes.
Expound?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So well, I think the part that I stopped you from was when Garvey was going into the alternative. You know, if you threaten him, then he'll, feel like he's defending himself by killing you. So it's diplomacy. It's diplomacy. So
I think Garvey's I think his whole approach is to just not send out threatening vibrations. Don't seem threatening. Garvey says it's best to smile, meaning like to give off those soft vibrations with him before he actually carries out the intentions. Yes. So to prevent him from doing so by showing him a smile rather than suggest the gravity. That's yes. What I meant by the vibration, the gravity of your indignation, which will cause him to think that you're going to kill him first. Then he will surely kill you in self-defense, even though he threatened you first. So it's just about the energy that you give off. So it's about being calm and not being so aggressive or abrasive, or not even being scared, because in those tight, intense situations, Garvey is explaining that your feelings are felt. So it's best to just be calm and just, carry out with a smile. Because if you smile, then he smiled, then nobody is threatened.
Excellent explanation, Lady President. But and to add, not to, but when as she was reading, what came to my mind is the first thing he says is if a man is going to kill you by threatening you. So he's just putting us already in this situation. For some reason, whatever reason it may be, diplomacy or whatever, it didn't work, character didn't work, humility, elocution didn't work, and we're at the point where someone is saying that they're going to kill us. What do we do at this point? Do we, as Garvey says, smile with them and hopefully they smile back, or do we do something that may make them think that we're trying to kill them, and then they will, this is what Garvey's saying. So as Lady President was speaking, the lesson that came to my mind is lesson 5, God. We already know, our connection to eternity. So, death is not anything that we fear on the other side. So hopefully we don't get to that place. But the thing is, and the thing I would ask us to consider is, if we are unfortunately in that position, what do we do? And Garvey suggests that it's best to smile with them and have the best intentions rather than do something that may frighten the other individual. Attorney Motep, your thoughts?
Yes, that's very smart. And he says later on, don't lose your head, but someone is threatening you, maybe even with death, and you got to be cool. But what he's saying here, don't lose your head, smile in the face of death, I guess. And
yes, sir. Even when you come face to face with death, don't lose your head, because you may need your calm, collective judgment to save your life. So emotion, I think Garvey talks about that earlier. We as leaders, we have to avoid emotion in our decision making and be more rational and logical in our decision making. So, Attorney Otep, I didn't want to cut you off. Though.
No, you hit it on the head there.
So we'll Lady President, do you want to read the entire paragraph? Here's the second one and the second one as well, and we'll close on Garvey's lesson on what Garvey says.
I'm starting from it. It said that a kind word turned away with wrath.
Yes, this paragraph and then the next paragraph.
It is said that a kind word turns away wrath. It is good diplomacy. Even if a man is going to kill you by threatening you, it is best to smile with him before he actually carries out the intention, so as to prevent him from doing so by showing him a smile rather than to suggest the gravity of your indignation, which will cause him to think that you are going to kill him first. Then he will surely kill you in self-defense, even though he first threatened you. Many a men have been killed when their assailant did not really mean to kill them, but only to bluff them. But in taking the matter too seriously and showing that he was going to do some killing too, he gets killed by the man protecting himself after his threat to keep from being killed. Never lose your head in dealing with a problem, because in doing so, you are bound to blunder and ultimately lose. Even if you are in an accident where you come face to face with death, don't lose your head, because you may need your calm and collective judgment to save your life. The moment you lose your head, you are taking chances. The odds are against you.
We just read the previous question, and Garvey's got this back to back. Kindness turns away wrath. That's the way he starts off the paragraph. But again, if we get to the point where unfortunately a man threatened or someone is threatening to kill us, we must, Garvey recommends to smile rather than to suggest the gravity of your indignation, which may cause him to think you are going to kill him first. So, just being cool, being extremely cool. I mean, because even if you are, you got something, to fight back with, you don't want to be aggressive or exuberant about it. You don't want to let them know what your intentions are. So I think that's the thing about it. But diplomacy is a mental thing. As I said, this is a dangerous lesson. Some people take this lesson and run with it, but they forget that We just read lesson 7 titled character. You know, what is the prop of character? What is the prop of, what does Garvey say the prop of character is? I was gonna say good character, but what is the prop of character as we build upon diplomacy? Y'all don't remember? It's very important. Basis of character. We don't remember nothing else about character. We should remember what the prop of character is. I think that was the first question in lesson 7. We got to go back. There's no, we're going to do this right. What does it mean to have good character? I guess it wasn't the first question.
Was it relating to self-control?
No, in a way, but oh, here it is. What is the greatest prop? Yeah, the greatest prop to character is honesty. So although lesson 9 is telling us, we can do certain things and encourages certain behaviors, we must still have that foundation of lesson 7 of character, of honesty. We don't want to be diplomats, around our family, these lesson, lesson 9 is talking about, as I said, as I've explained it, this is us going outside of our house, outside of our society, dealing with other groups, nations, and governments.
It kind of, the whole thing about if someone threatens to kill you, it also tells you that you shouldn't threaten someone because they may think you're serious even if you're not.
Yes. Yes. All right, let's get through here. We'll 4 after 9. What does Garvey mean when he says, quote, we should never lose our head, and why? I think, Lady President, you just went over this. But anybody want to summarize why we should never lose our head and why? I think God kind of touched on it as well. Never lose your head in dealing with the problem. Right.
Because you need your calm and collective judgment to save your life.
Yes, sir. So again, just rational over emotional. And nothing wrong with being emotional, but we should not be lost in fear. We shouldn't be lost in fear and panic. We still have to, even if the car is flipping, we got to be thinking logically of protecting ourselves and, surviving what's going on. So we don't want to just be screaming all over the place. All right. Great answer, Attorney Imhotep. You may need your calm, collective judgment to save your life. Rational, logical is what I say. Questions, comments before we proceed? Got a lot of questions. Number 9, why does Garvey say that morally a diplomat must be a scamp? Why must a diplomat be a scamp morally? Well, yeah, we got to take our time with this lesson, so I'm not going to skip over nothing. We're not going to. Why must a diplomat be a scamp?
To also have the ability to anticipate.
Pretty much. Pretty much. We dealing with some nasty, greedy individuals, vicious, doing some things that we can't think of to maintain the resources for their group. We have to understand that, and again, we're going out to deal with these individuals. We're no longer we're jumping off the porch. We're not just in the house and amongst our friends and family, but now we're face to face with potential open enemies. But from a political standpoint, that's the funny thing about America. Why does Garvey say that morally a diplomat must be a scamp? He must be a mental twister. He is to anticipate the evil of other men's design. So as we said earlier, we got to predict what other individuals are doing. How are you going to be able to predict what an evil person is doing unless you kind of put yourself in that position? And again, this lesson, these lessons are very dangerous, can be misinterpreted. But I would recommend we build upon our previous lessons. Lesson 6, Christ, gave us an example. Lesson 7, character, gave us boundaries. But lesson 9 is basically breaking a lot of those boundaries, but for a particular purpose, for the protection. And what is that purpose? That purpose is lesson 8. It's the protection of the society that we've created. But we must be mental twisters, anticipate the evil of other men's designs. The world and mankind are immoral and dishonest in their behavior. So they cutthroat, Garvey, and this is Garvey at the end of, his success, looking back, and he's saying that, the world is dishonest and immoral. So I'm not about to waste 20, 30 years of my life, just to come to the same conclusion. I'm going to take our teachers' experience and I'm going to build from it. And I'm going to say that, the majority of mankind is immoral and dishonest, and I got to be prepared for that. He has to adopt such a method to safeguard. We have to adopt that method to safeguard ourselves and the interest from such design. So, again, as we said earlier, how must we safeguard ourselves and our interests? We got to anticipate what others are willing to do, and how do we do that? Unfortunately, the word that Garvey uses is a scamp. Questions, comments?
Yeah, when he says, because the world and mankind are immoral and dishonest in their behavior, that reminds me of one of the previous lessons. I can't recall which one. That basically man is dishonest, immoral, basically.
Yes, sir. It's interesting. I love this. This is, I love this book. Obviously, if y'all can't understand this yet, and even the way it's laid out, we learn a little bit more each time we go through this text. The lesson man is lesson 11. So right now we're going over the questions from diplomacy, lesson 9, where he lays out a background for what to expect from man. But in the lesson on man, he goes into where this mentality comes from, and what he saw as the solution to address it. But unless we apply that solution, my understanding is we should have the expectation based upon what history has said, the history of man specifically. And again, history of man, lesson 1. Questions, comments? But yes, this is diplomacy. We will get to man very shortly. Hang tight. It's an excellent lesson. This entire book is. And what does Garvey say about the truth, and lying? And again, I put stress in regards to diplomacy. So don't be running around, in the community, at home, lying, talking about you learned this at, Division 421 officers training. Garvey says this specifically in regards to diplomacy. What does Garvey say about truth and lying? We talked about it. I let the cat out the bag earlier. We being diplomats. He just talked about being a scamp.
He says if the truth is going to affect your cause, then never speak of it. But go around it in every kind of ambitious way to justify your lie to save the cause. If you have won your cause by a lie, then as early as possible, try to make the cause right but only after you have won. For no cause can continue successfully without righteousness of the thing from all of your imaginative experience.
Lady President said that as eloquently as possible. Any questions, comments on that?
I think about going on the orientation that we have, and it talks about what is race first, and it gives off the in orientation gives off these different definitions of what race first is. And in race first, it talks about sacrifice. That's one of the causes for race first. So this is one of the sacrifices that you make for the race, because it says even if right here up top it says you cannot be a true Christian before the act, but become so afterwards by repentance, which is personal. So it's just about making sure that you have the protection of the race first, and out of the eyes of the opposition, because they're going to lie and they're going to pull all of the tricks out of their bags just to manipulate you for whatever we have, for the resources that we have, that we own. So it's just about the protection of one another.
Yes,
so,
ma'am. Thank you, Lady President. And you just brought a lot to mind. I got to be honest with everybody. This question specifically has caused us to lose a lot of quote unquote Garveyites. Individuals that have claimed, Garveyism for years, but they may be caught up in a certain religion and religious beliefs, and they may have said race first and professed race first, but really behind the scenes, it's religion first. And when Garvey goes through things like this, it's a serious clash with individuals' personal beliefs and how they were brought up. Again, I've said, I never liked the idea of politicians and politics for these specific reasons, because this was always the expectations of what those people represented, and Garvey is confirming these suspicions. But again, as adults, if we really want freedom, if we really want independence, if we really want sovereignty, we have to deal with these individuals, unfortunately, until the world becomes, not perfect, but perfect enough to where individuals can truly be honest, and truly say, hey, our nations can have peace for 100 years, and that peace is respected not only by us as individuals, but by our children as well. And that's repeated for hundreds of years. Until we can do that and show that as human beings, as mankind, we have to expect the worst. And while we do that, we won't be effective trying to be a Christian, as Garvey said. You can't be a true Christian before the act, so become so afterwards by repentance, which is personal. We are protecting the interests of others. We have to sink our own personality, our own beliefs. We got to put that on the back. Race first now. We're representatives. I'm not just Brother John or John Hargrove. I'm president of Dr. Julius Nyeri CBPM Division 421 in Atlanta. So I'm not only speaking for myself and my household, but I'm speaking for our entire membership. Lady President, same thing. Attorney Imhotep, same thing. But any, Sister Diane, developing to take on that title. But that's what this is really about. Any questions, comments? So it's not really about us and our personal beliefs anymore. It's about, we are representing this body, what's best for our body. And what do we have to do to obtain what's best for our body? And if that clashes with our personal beliefs, we need to come to grips with the reality that we'll have to do that, and Garvey said, hey, you got to do it. If you got to pray about it later, pray about it later. But it should be clear that we have a responsibility, we have a duty, and that duty is do what's best for our people. But again, with that, I'll say this: building upon the foundation of Christ and character. So that's why this lesson is very difficult to instruct. Questions, comments?
I protect my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security of the red, black, and green. I'm just saying.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But yes, anybody else?
Yeah. Yeah, he makes, well, I guess generally, yeah, Christians are supposed to be so godly, truthful, never tell a lie, apparently, and he's saying no. I guess in the diplomatic sense, you cannot be a true Christian before the act.
Yes, sir.
You repent. You have to repent afterwards. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. You weren't finished. My bad.
No. I'm finished now.
Okay. Well, one of the things we can't forget is that there's a joke that says that when the certain people show up in Africa, they showed up with the Bible. And then when you close your eye to pray, you have the Bible, but they have your land. So it's all about race. It cannot be ignored. It can never be ignored, whether you're Christian, Muslim, whatever.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation.
Therefore, you have to adopt all methods of diplomacy to protect others. Hence, you cannot do so with a very Christian soul. So just being charitable and honest and loving and, as Christ is taught, we can't, that's not an effective diplomacy in the real world. We can't do so with a very Christian soul because most of the souls we are dealing with are corrupt. So while we're being honest and charitable, others are being dishonest and greedy, where they don't need what we're providing, but they continue to consume what we're providing, and it doesn't allow it to go to others that really are in need. So we got to be diplomatic. We can't just be 100% religious. Questions, comments?
Yeah, forgive me, but it just seemed kind of comical to think of all these qualities they're giving to the Christians here. It's
understand. And the way I understand what I've learned through Garveyism and Universal African Nationalism, ideas are presented in an ideal fashion. So it may not be realistic as to how it's actually practiced, but the ideal sense of how these philosophies, should be practiced in our eyes.
very well said.
So yeah, there's a reality of these religions, but when you think about it, it's like that can't be the intentions of these philosophies. But that's another discussion. All right. In regards to our enemies, so again, we're talking about our enemies. What should we profess and what should we give them? What should we profess and what should we give them? These are our enemies. I got a great question to follow up on that too. The follow-up question will be, who are our enemies? But first question from the text. in regards to our enemies, what should we profess and what should we give them?
Always profess friendship for your enemies so as to disarm them.
And what should we offer them?
Let me see. Offer your enemy gifts that you can afford to lose.
Yes, sir. So just like kind words that mean nothing, gifts you can afford to lose. Profess, and profess means to speak, to claim, to tell others, hey, this is my friend, so it doesn't mean, they have to actually be your friend. This is diplomacy. So in a room, this may be your open enemy, but I think Garvey used the words, like good friend. It's my good friend, Bob, it disarms the audience, so if anything were to happen, that would be the reputation and the character that you gave off. It's like, dang, man, it's unfortunate what happened to Bob, but every time he was with John, John would say that's his good friend Bob. So John wouldn't have been wouldn't have done anything. But you understand what I'm saying. Now, follow up. I think this is not this, Garvey has used the word enemies very loosely. We're reading through lesson 9. When we look out into the world, when it comes to Black nationalism, the struggle, the enemy seems to be obvious. Has Garvey identified an enemy, and who does Garvey identify as our primary enemy thus far through lesson 9 of Course of African Philosophy? Have we talked about enemies? Have we identified enemies?
Talks about the Jewish man.
Jewish man as an enemy?
He said they don't play fair.
They don't play fair. Okay, I'll give you that. Anyone else? Just something to keep in mind. I'll tell y'all what I think. Let me see. I don't think I've had any questions in regards to enemies.
People that try to manipulate you or try to con you from your ownership of autonomy or what you own.
Yeah, but where I'm going is a lot of our teaching and a lot of what we discuss nowadays goes straight to the Caucasian and the European. Garvey has not openly said, as other organizations claim, the white man is the devil, so to speak. This is our open enemy. He does clearly state what our biggest opposition is, where our biggest opposition comes from, but it's not as it has been portrayed in by other groups. So just want us to keep in mind that concept of enemy, and also contrast that with what our teachers and leaders now today talk about, and who they profess to be our enemy and why they claim that our enemy is who they profess. So in regards to our enemies, we should profess friendship. We should give them gifts that we can afford to lose. Questions, comments? (9:25). Yeah, it's going to be at 10 o'clock night. Why should we avoid yes or no answers to important questions? And this is in regards to diplomacy. Why should we avoid yes or no answers to important questions? This is kind of repeating on what we had talked about earlier. Not being direct.
He says, I always try to escape giving a yes or no to any question that is important. He says, if you have to say yes or no, do so in a long explanation so that you can escape out of the explanation from the positive answer. If trouble is involved, it becomes your defense. I always try to leave your remark or words room for controversy or denial of meaning as decided on by the other party.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So again, the power of definition. We don't want to relinquish the power of definition and have, in certain situations, sometimes we want to be very clear, concise, direct, but sometimes, people are trying to lead us into a trap. So, as diplomats, we have to be psychologists, and we have to understand when to have certain conversations and how to have certain conversations. But we have to be very careful of, as it's been termed, painting ourselves into a corner of where people understand people that you don't want to know, they understand your definitive position on certain things. Leave things vague. You're a representative. They should not know, how many troops, you have in a certain location. They shouldn't even know you have troops in that location, so we're representatives. It's not just about us anymore. It's not just about, and this is a tough thing about leadership. It's not just, when we mess up or we say the wrong things, it's not just us that gets in trouble. It's the entire organization that goes down. Any questions, comments? Garvey's incarceration didn't only affect him and his family, but it affected our entire race. We as Garvey said, he's teaching us to be Garvey's personified. We have to be willing to, and we haven't had this since his time. We have to be willing to develop ourselves such that we can continue that work, and we can multiply, the number of individuals that can continue that work. And we no longer in a position where that Messiah complex, where we're dependent upon one individual to do everything for us, and we just sitting around waiting for them to come back. All right. What should you offer men or women if you want them to talk? What should you offer a man or woman if you want them to talk? Want some information? You want them to talk, want them to start talking. What should you offer?
Courtesy.
Courtesy. I think that's right. I thought it was a drink.
If they like to drink.
Courtesy. It says find out his weakness and cater to that weakness. I think you mentioned women drinking, whatever, as Sister Diane said, whatever it is that they like. So, again, this is diplomacy, things that we got to do. If it, I like to be upfront with brothers and sisters. I don't want people wasting their time, for 20, 30 years saying that they're a Garveyite, but they're not willing to step up and take responsibility for the things that need to be done, especially from a diplomacy standpoint. So it's just about where we want to be, what level of Garveyism we want to exercise and demonstrate. But from a diplomacy standpoint, it can get nasty, it can get dirty. But at the end of the day, we have to understand, one, what we're doing it for, who we're doing it for, and two, what we're up against. It shouldn't be what I would consider unfair or malicious, but it should be warranted. The behavior, the response, the relationship should be warranted based on what we've learned in history. Questions, comments? But yeah, black slave master is no better than a white slave master. So we're not just trying to take their position, and I don't even like talking like that, like they have a certain position that we want. But it's not as though we're trying to, as some activists have learned and demonstrated, we're not trying to be better white men, better white women than others. We want to show an example that's never been demonstrated throughout the history of man. It's been demonstrated in its time and throughout history, but never in this time, the way in which we want to leave our legacy and our example upon future generations. Why should we have access to, or who should have access to valuable diplomacy papers, and why? Who should have access to valuable diplomacy papers? Brother Art, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
You got this one?
I think
What's the question again?
Who should have access to valuable diplomacy papers, and why should they have access? If they should have access.
I think the administration.
The administration?
Yeah.
Okay.
The President General and the main administration.
Makes sense. Anybody else have an answer?
He says never give valuable papers or anything of value to a first acquaintance or cordial friend or neighbor. He says keep them secretly and privately because you don't know who may give you away, even innocently.
Yes, ma'am. Diplomacy, somewhat of a secret agent. But we are teaching ourselves to be Marcus Garvey personified. And there will be some things, some relationships that we will have to keep private because we don't know who may give us away, even innocently. And Garvey, he doesn't, I like what you said, Brother Art, and I agree. I can't disagree. But I don't think Garvey used that. And let me go to the text on that, page 81. We'll read the entirety to be clear on what Garvey is saying. Never give valuable papers or anything of valuable to a first acquaintance or a cordial friend or neighbor to keep. The documents are very valuable by way of information. Don't allow even members of your own household to keep them. Keep them secretly and privately because you don't know who may give you away. So he's saying, even your wife, brother, obviously, father, children. He doesn't speak on administration, but I would have to argue that our closest relationships would be our wives or husbands. And if he's saying that we have to keep them private from our wives and husbands, I would argue that's even private from administration.
I have a question then.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't some of the diplomatic papers be important to the administration? I mean, they wouldn't be important to the administration. I'm kind of lost there.
Give me a second. We got to define valuable papers. I would argue that anything dealing with the administration is not, most of the time, it's not our personal property. So I'm trying to understand how to apply what Garvey is stating here in regards to valuable papers, something that we would see as valuable, but not property of the UNIA.
Just kind of think about how in the beginning y'all were saying how some were written and some were unwritten. The same reason those ones were probably unwritten and the value these ones have since they're written is kind of plays to that a little bit, maybe.
He's speaking to it on lesson 1, we talked about a private library and keeping things, so that you have them. This is tough, brother Art, because even the way I read it, he's still saying you basically have to trust yourself. Anyone that you try to trust outside of yourself for this in particular could be taken advantage of.
President, if I may, he says the reason he says keep them secrets is because you don't know who may give you away even innocently. He said there's always a third person, and he has that in italics, always a third person in everybody's life. He says be careful of that third person. That person may come between a man and his wife, a brother and his brother, sister and his sister, a father and his children, a mother and her children. And he says, remember, there is always a third person, and that third person may not like you very much. Also, be careful of the second person, because the third person always comes in through the second person. So he's just saying, just protect yourself, even in the sake of people just being frustrated with you and just saying something just off the sake of frustration to that third person. And even though they didn't mean it that way, it's just the fact that if they never had the information in the first place, it could have never came off even in the spark of passion. So that's what he was meaning.
What I will add, Brother Art, again, this is lesson 9. This builds upon the first lessons. We have to master the first 8 lessons. There may come a time when we have to protect the UNIA from itself. And I think it even says that in the Constitution. This is, to your question specifically, I would say this is an extreme situation to where you're putting your diplomacy hat on, and in addition to a mastery of the first 8 lessons, and you're making decisions as to what's best for the race as a whole. And you feel, maybe a compromise within the administration.
Okay.
But in summary, we'll read it one more time, and then we'll move on. Never give valuable papers or anything of value to a first acquaintance or cordial friend or neighbor to keep. If the documents are very valuable by way of information, don't allow even members of your own household to keep them. Keep them secretly and privately, because you don't know who may give you away even innocently. And as Lady President said, it's always third person comes in through the second person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's a tough one there, because of the previous question. Can you trust your wife? In my instance, your queen, with these valuable papers, and I can see here where he says, I guess, no, not even your queen, because they could give you away
innocently.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, that's the importance of this course. That's the importance of us all going through these lessons. We all got to be on the same page. We all have to understand the importance of the information that we're given. We all have to understand that what we're saying when we're having barbershop conversations, who's listening, who's around when we're talking, when we use words like Marcus Garvey or the UNIA. We have to be very careful. So even our spouses and our families can innocently divulge the wrong information. My wife, for example, nothing has happened, but she could, talking with her girlfriends, like, oh yeah, my husband's having a meeting with, some red, black, and green guy, men and women at the Open Alegrio on a regular basis, and the wrong person hearing that, boom, they are, what, I wonder what they doing. I wonder what they talking about. How often are they? So we just got to be careful about very sensitive information and who we're giving that information to. We basically can't, because it can leak out, unfortunately. Questions, comments? Got a couple more questions on this lesson. Yeah, it's gonna be a late night. Oh wait, is that it? I think that's it. 14. Okay, we can get to the reading. Questions, comments on diplomacy? But yeah, that's how he ends the lesson. Wait, that's that. Yeah, that is how he ends the lesson, is with valuable information, protecting valuable information. Many people get into trouble without knowing where the trouble comes from. Sometimes it comes right from your own home, by talking too much in your own home, and by the circles in your home not appreciating your position. So that hits home, like our brothers and sisters, as Garvey said, the majority of our brothers and sisters are ignorant. They don't understand government, the value of government, what it is that we're trying to build, what we are discussing, the positions of responsibility that we're accepting. So they don't understand, they don't appreciate that. To them, it's a game and it's meaningless. So to talk about it and to discuss it with others, they don't see the importance of it. They innocently give the information out to other parties who are not interested in you, but are probably interested in seeing that the one you have offended gets justice. So this is talking about if you bother somebody's friend, they don't care about you, but they want to make sure their friend gets justice. Therefore, the person prefers to see you hang rather than see his friend whom you have injured go without justice because of what you might have done to that person in your secret. But keep this information secret. Diplomacy. It's a very tough lesson, tough to instruct, tough to execute and demonstrate. But the best thing I can tell us is, before we get lost in lesson 9, make sure we have a good grounding and foundation in lessons 1 through 7 specifically, but as well as lesson 8. Questions, comments on diplomacy? Lady President, are you reading for us this evening?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. If there aren't any questions, we will start the reading for lesson 10.
Okay. Lesson 10, economy. There are several kinds of economy, but this subject deals specifically with the financial economy. Economy is based upon good and sane judgment. The practice of it is that you must always be on the safe side of your bargains or your dealings. Never exhaust yourself. Always have a reserve.
1 second, Lady President. Sorry. I wanted to do this as we go forward, but kind of give y'all a background and understanding of this lesson and how it relates to the previous. But as we said, lessons 1 through 7, personal development and growth. Lesson 8, social system, defining our society. Lesson 9, diplomacy, coming off the porch, interacting with other groups, organizations, and societies. And then lesson 10 is economy. So as we're interacting, how do we fund our society? That's what the lesson on economy is going to focus on and touch on. So just to show the progression, now we're talking about, we can have a whole lesson on economy, but this is Garvey's summary of how we approach economy. Lady President, you have the floor.
Okay. There should always be something left over that you may there should always be something left over that you may fall back on in time of need. Money is the prop of life, in that it pays for all necessities and offers security for all opportunities. In earning money, one should never spend as much money as he earns. That is bad business. Whatever his earning capacity, he should always be thrifty enough to have to save at least 15 to 20% of his income, storing it for storing it up for making better opportunities when they come, and providing for a rainy day. If you spend all you earn, you are on the edge of bankruptcy all the time. If you spend more than you earn, you are not only a fool, but you are a very dishonest person, and you are bound to suffer without any other chance. And therefore, always make it a policy to save money out of your earnings, never mind how small it is. If you have better commercial ideas than your present job calls for, and your present remuneration warrants, then save out of your present earnings to take advantage of the opportunity to improve yourself within a reasonable time in achieving these ideas. Never engage yourself in living luxuriously when you can only live ordinarily. Ultimately, you are bound to fail and be the laughing stock of your friends in the community by not being able to keep up your luxurious standard of living on a limited purse. Never buy anything for more money than you have. Never buy anything for more money than you have, or positively expect to have within the time limit for the purchase. Never give away money that you cannot spare. Never give away anything of value that can be turned into money except you can spare it. Never borrow on interest from anybody. If you can, within a reasonable time, pay your debts. If you pay your own debts with your own money, you will save the interest for yourself that you pay to others. The moment you start paying interest to others on money you borrow, the moment you start paying interest to others on money borrowed, you become a slave working for somebody else. It is better to wait until you have the money yourself to do a thing before you borrow it to purchase the thing and pay interest on it. At the same time, you must use good judgment to find out whether it is your advantage to seek an opportunity of doing something big with somebody else's money, even with interest to be paid. You must decide if that particular business will positively bring enough to meet the interest and give you sufficient profit to justify the risk you take in assuming the responsibility of paying interest to others may be of value. And assuming the responsibility of paying interest to others may be of value. The moment you are loaned money on interest to do anything, the person loaning you the money must be credited as being wise enough to know beforehand if more money can be made out of the thing or investment than only the interest. If it is so, it is likely that he himself will go into that business and not give you the chance to go into it with his money. He may find a friend and want to help you, but few money lenders are friends. They are lending for usury and have no souls. At least their souls are bad. So be careful in borrowing money to go into business. It is better you save and wait until you are able to go into business on your own account before you take the risk. It is bad business to go into any business without enough capital to run that business. 99 cases of 100 will fail. Always consider costs before you go into anything, and in figuring out the cost. And always consider costs before you go into anything. And in figuring out the cost, be sure that there is a margin of profit before you do the thing. Otherwise, it is not worthwhile doing. If you are going to address a meeting 100 miles away, first count the cost of railroad fare or transportation to and from the cost of the meeting, your living expenses while going and staying at the meeting and returning from the meeting, the percentage to pay those who are looking after the meeting, and the prospect of getting a crowd large enough that will meet all these expenses and leave you with a profit of at least 25%. If there is no profit in it, you are taking a risk, and when you are finished, you will be sorry you went. Always work out beforehand the possible financial results of every transaction, and be sure that your arrangements are of such as to bring profit at the end. Otherwise, you are wasting your time. You are wasting time. As far as the UNIA is concerned, you should always calculate for profit for the association in everything you do. Profit comes in many ways to the association. For instance, if you go to address a meeting 100 miles away, profit will come by new members joining the association, the establishing of agencies there for the association. Leaving behind the sentiments of the association may be the advantage to any money you receive for the expenses of the meeting. As long as you have converted and attached someone permanently to the UNIA, that may be considered a profit. Always seek to get some profit, otherwise your work is a failure. When your work is to be judged, you will find that a balance sheet of how much you have received and how much you have dispersed as a representative of the association, and how much net you have turned into the movement, and how much morally you have helped the movement will be called for. If your balance sheet shows that for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year you have not added anything net to the association, your importance in it is nil. You will not account for much. Your status will be far below that of others who have been more valuable to the movement. A president or a representative who can show that for the year he or she has turned over $500, $100, or $10,000. I'm sorry, $500, $1,000, or $10,000 net to the association occupies a position of eminence that calls for the greatest recognition of service rendered. Another president or representative may occupy no such position of recognition because of his failure. Men and women are promoted on their record. Their record must be profitable. If their record is that of failure, they remain failures until they can prove otherwise. There is no other standard by which you can judge the ability of a man. Always seek to get substantial value for their work, because you will never be able to recall them as they move along. Whenever you want to sell anything, unless you meet somebody who is badly in need of that thing, you are always going to be offered less than the value of the thing. So never buy anything for its full value, otherwise you will have it at a loss. It is better to buy things for cash or on some short term rather than on long term. A long-term purchase carries a greater percentage of interest on the purchase. Something that you purchase on terms can be bought at almost half the price if bought for cash, because people are also anxious to sell for cash, even though they make a sacrifice of the thing because they want the cash. When you buy on terms, you must bear the burden, not the seller. When you buy for cash, the seller bears a burden in the loss to get cash. Always have cash and bargains. Always have cash and bargains. Always have cash and bargains will always show up. Yeah. Always have cash and bargains will always show up. If you have no cash, when you see the bargains and want them, you pay twice the price for them when you buy them on terms. Never lie above your income. Never live up to your income. Never assume responsibility when you are not prepared for it. It will burden you down. Never marry broke. Never marry never marry before you are ready. Never allow anybody to force you to do anything against your will. If you can see a thing and get good results from it at a cheaper price, don't pay a dearer price except you have money to throw away. Don't lose your head in thinking that something is going to run away. Therefore, you must grab it now. Following that attitude, you may find yourself to be a big fool, because what you grab here, thinking it is a wonder, you may find thrown away next door, not worth anything. Always look around first when you are in doubt. Try to find a duplicate. You may come back to the first, but if a thing is in the neighborhood with one person, it is almost likely that the similar thing is also in the same neighborhood. Search the neighborhood first before you decide to lay all of your money on one thing. Never think that never think that one thing or that one person is the only peach in town. There may be better peaches on the tree. Try to curb your weakness for being a spendthrift. Every time you are tempted to spend 10 cents on a dollar on a frivolous thing that you will not get any direct profit or return from, hold your hand. Count 10 before you do the thing. Say to yourself, have I any other pressing need or use for this money rather than this frivolous thing? There is always something else that you really need. Therefore, you will keep the money in your pocket. Never give your money away outside of your race. If you are called upon to give it to God, ask yourself if God is really going to get it. Only when you feel that it is going to channel that God will really appreciate himself should you give it, because God himself doesn't want money, but a good cause in his name may need it. And you should first find out if there is really a cause. To send a man touring around the world in the name of God for his own pleasure is not given to God. To give a man more worldly goods than he has already is not given to God. To give to help carry on social service, work in the community, or to help the poor of the community, or to rescue the children of the community is given to God. If you have to be critical and giving to God, be even more so when you give to man. It must be for good cause, and the nearest cause to you is the cause of your own race. Never fail to give charity where charity is needed within your own race, but don't allow yourself to be tricked. If an old thing is good, don't buy a new one. Don't follow fashion for fashion's sake. Follow your own judgment for intelligence sake. If nothing is wrong with your suit of clothes, don't buy a new one because someone else has done so. All it may need is attention, and so with everything. You may badly need the money later on. Then you may spend it on a new suit. It is better to have the money than the thing, because when trouble comes, you can run with your money, but you may not be able to carry all the things. The largest sum of money can be carried in your pocketbook, while the weight of other things may cause you to wait for the next train, and by waiting you may lose. Put your values more in money than in things. Only have those things that are necessary. If you have the ambition to be greater than you are, and you don't have the means to immediately do so, then practice rigid thrift in your present position by saving as much as you can, so that in a given period of time, you will be able to change your position to reach your objective. Never consume all you have and then expect to climb higher. It cannot be done. Never go into anything in business that you know nothing about. No fool can make a success of anything. Therefore, know your business before you go into it to make a profit out of it. Never live on the capital of your business. You must live on the profit. If you start to live on the capital, there will soon be no capital and no business. If you mean to stay in that business, whatever the profit is, live only on that profit and not on all of that profit. Otherwise, the time may come when you have to live on the capital because you made no profit for that period. Business is only successful when you are making profit and not spending all the profit. Whoever an enemy or any person attempts to create prejudice against your organization with the government, take immediate steps to counteract the statement and reassure the government that you have no intention of doing anything not in keeping with the law. Always watch for this because the government can easily outlaw your organization and curtail or prevent your activities. Therefore, don't join any movement that the government is not favorably inclined to tolerate, chiefly communism. Let the communists fight their own battles. Let other people carry their own discord. Have nothing to do with them. The more they carry on discord and you keep away from it, the better it will be for you, because by keeping your head, you will be able to see more clearly and get an advantage. Never let the government put you on the defensive. It will create prejudice against you. Keep out of court as much as you can. If possible, never go there except to do social service work to help others. Try to never be charged with a crime or be on trial. It will affect the association and affect you. Always try first to settle racial disputes without going to the law. Law is expensive and uncertain. Expensive and uncertain. When you go to the law too often, you establish a bad record. And when anybody wants to know anything about you, particularly as a defendant, encourage the people to keep away. I'm sorry.
You didn't have particular government officials?
Particularly government. I didn't read the part. I'm sorry. When you go to the law too often, you establish a bad record. And when anybody wants to know anything about you, particularly government officials, they can search the court records. Sorry about that. Keep away as a defendant. Encourage the people to keep away and not to waste their money in litigation. If their litigation can be settled by you or any responsible representative of the race. The people pay too many fines in court. The money they pay for fines could be used for their families and their own benefit. I always counsel Negroes not to be anxious to start litigations or to prosecute each other if it can be avoided. Going to court too often gives the race a bad name and causes the government to think badly of the race. Always try to impress the government that you are law-abiding citizens so that when you make a request of the government, it may respect the request. Always keep your good work before the government and make the government aware of it, particularly social service work, charitable work, educational work. This does not mean racial education. Your racial education is private, like the Jews. Make the government aware of all public education tending towards good citizenship. It should prominently be brought to the attention of the government. And that's it.
Yes, ma'am. That completes lesson 10, titled Economy. Is 6 after 10. Any questions on what we read?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. It's just with that being said, first of all, I just want to say the whole this whole book of Garvey and the message to the people is just an eye opener for what we have to do as our people because of the threat that we are to the people of non-color. But he says a lot about whispering certain things to our people, going into the households and talking about basically like Black liberation, Black nationalism, and things of that nature. And it just goes to show how powerful we are as a people. That things like our knowledge and our nationalism and things that we came upon. It just can't be said out loud because of how sacred it is. And it just it just brings so many things to light about how we should maintain ourselves as a people, and just how we just bring these things together, and how we just brings our knowledge back together as a people. So it's just real enlightening to keep coming across that particular notion, to always keep our knowledge in-house, to make sure that we say things to each other in a whisper in-house to each other, so that the Jews or the people of non-color don't know what we're doing, so they can't use our knowledge against us, because that's what they've been doing. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yes, ma'am. That reminds me of, I was thinking of a comment, but the big sense of what I've pulled from these lessons thus far, in summary, it comes down to responsibility, and as Lady President said, there are others, non or less melanated people that are intimidated by us and our presence and our existence. And we are stepping up to the responsibility of representing our people. And it's a very difficult thing to do, but we have the lessons from, the brother that we claim is, the most successful in our time. So when I see people walk away from the UNIA, it's interesting, because usually it comes with, it's two things. One is ignorance. They don't know. They really don't know. And they, just going about their business. And that makes sense to an extent. But at the same time, they're walking away and they don't want to learn anymore. So that's more of a fear aspect. They're afraid to continue to learn more about what's going on. And we try to make sure, and we all have to be careful of this as leaders and as teachers, the word indoctrination. We have to make sure we're educating over indoctrinating. And the biggest difference between those two comes down to the ability to question. So indoctrination comes with, this is what it is. You have no opportunity to question what is being presented. It's presented as fact. Education is, this is our opinion. What do you think about it? And there's a dialogue that comes with it. But as I said, the first group that walks away is they don't really want to learn any more about it. The second is ones, and it's still fear. It's the ones that have learned too much. They know exactly what the responsibility is, and they know the burden of that responsibility, and that knowledge and burden is too much. It's really like when I first came into the organization, President Ross asked me, he was like, why do I think Black people don't get more involved with things like this, and we're more so in mainstream society? And the analogy that came to my mind was the movie The Matrix. And there's a scene in there where a guy he's been out of the Matrix, and he's been with Neo and his group, but he's made a agreement with the machines to go back into the Matrix and go back into, and he's talking about he wants to be a actor, a movie star, or whatever, somebody famous and rich, obviously. But you got to understand, if our people had the choice of fighting for their liberation, for $100 a month versus, being a slave of the system, for $1,000 a month. Most of our people are taking the option of they're signing up for it. So I still feel that way. And that's, as I said, from the later aspect, when people realize these responsibilities, it becomes too much, and they just say, hey, I'm gonna just focus on myself and my family. And maybe get involved in community politics. But UNIA, first word is universal. So once you really understand it, Garvey is trying to make us Garveys personified. Garvey wasn't tied to one particular region. If it was, it would be Africa, even though he never touched the continent. But he understood, I would argue, he understood that, and he says it, we were the first men and women of this land, of this world. So this whole thing is ours. Our headquarters and our base is going to be out of Africa, but this whole thing belongs to us, and therefore we are responsible for this whole thing. And we step up and we clearly profess to the world that we accept that responsibility. Questions, comments before we close out for the evening?
Yes, briefly, I'm also very much enjoying the lessons. And as he says, always counsel Negroes not to be anxious to start litigation or to prosecute each other.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and especially start litigation because we seem to, we want to sue everybody.
Yes, sir.
And he says, law is expensive and uncertain.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and exactly, that's what it is. Yes, so I'm enjoying it. Thank you. Race first.
Thank you, Attorney Motep. And again, that goes back to our ultimate purpose, our ultimate aim, and what are we really fighting for? Are we fighting for a comfortable position, as third, fourth class citizens here in America, or are we fighting such that our children and grandchildren can have positions of prominence and power, and be able to represent our brothers and sisters throughout the world? So when we're going into their courts, as Garvey says, as I say, what are we really fighting for? What and what are we asking them for approval for? Why are we even going through their system and legitimizing their system? That's counter to Garveyism. When you go to the law too often, you establish a bad record, and anybody wants to know anything about you, particularly government officials, they can search the court record. So that's one of the main things, and that's funny about people that say that they have such relationships with courts. We do have to have relationships with courts as leaders and as representatives, but individuals that are just in and out of the court system, you've given all of your information over to the government, and you are basically at this point, you working with the government. Basically, you're doing their bidding. You're tying up the expenses and the time of other brothers and sisters. Keep away as a defendant. Encourage the people to keep away and not waste their money in litigation. If their litigation can be settled by you or any responsible representative of the race. So yeah, like, why are we going and legitimizing their systems? We should be developing our own council of elders, council of issues, have our own judges to litigate our concerns. The money they pay for fines could be used for their families and their own benefit. So representatives, we can't be wasting our resources. Thank you, Attorney Motep. Excellent point.
I was gonna say too, President, I was gonna tell you to touch on, therefore we says always watch for this when he's talking about whenever an enemy or any person attempts to create prejudice against your organization with the government, take immediate steps to counteract the statement and reassure the government that you have no intention on doing anything not in keeping with the law. And it says, always watch for this because government can easily outlaw your organization and curtail or prevent your activities. And also he says, therefore, don't join any movement that the government is not favorably inclined to tolerate, chiefly communism. President, did you want to touch on that?
Yes. And that's interesting because this lesson is titled Economy, but he's touching on other issues. And as Lady President said, the very first part is the government. And as we should know, we are representatives of a government, but we are a government within the bounds of another government. So in my pictorial that I'll put together, it'll show the UNIA is confined currently within the bounds of the United States government. So that's why we touched on we have to respect, police. We have to maintain order, but we have to follow the rules because if we step out of line, it's easy for the government overnight to declare our organization unlawful. So, building upon diplomacy, building upon representation, we must have a good relationship and a good reputation when it comes to the government. There's lists like Anti-Defamation League, hate groups and things like that have been put together throughout time. But fortunately, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, to my knowledge, has never been included as one of those groups. And we have to, now it's our time in 2023. We have to make sure that Atlanta Division 421, is not on the paper, on the news, as being an organization that's outlawed. So we have to make sure that throughout our tenure, throughout our time as leaders, when we hand over the organization to the next batch of leaders, there's no stains, there's no blemishes on our reputation, and they can function and expand freely. So, reputation again.
Yes, that's a very important point here. As you were saying, we are in effect a government within a government.
Yes, sir.
And we must be law abiding at all times, as
Yes,
you were saying, and that's so that the government won't be coming down on us.
Yes, sir.
And I'm a criminal defense attorney, and all I see are African males locked up in prisons and jails, right over here on Rice Street in Fulton County and DeKalb County and Clayton County and Henry County and all over. So we don't. Well, when they think of criminal law, they think of the African, the black male, or and black people, women also, very much so. So we must be law abiding at all times.
Yes, sir. Our fight is not simply for civil rights. We all fight for civil rights, but our fight is human rights. And we are fighting a fight that is undeniable. And when it's put on the world stage, the things that we're fighting for, the right to have representation, the right to be able to speak, the right to vote, these things, although they may at times have been illegal for us to do, the world as a whole well, let me stop. Let me not say that, because there are some areas where they still allow that. But I guess the world as a whole wouldn't allow America to get away with that hypocrisy. So we have to continue to fight for our human rights, our universal rights, our rights for self-determination, self-governance. You know, and if we, you know, if we're deemed unlawful in that pursuit, then I would say that's justified. You know, I would say that's, you know, what John Lewis would call good trouble. You know, Martin Luther King at times had to stand up for certain rights. So, you know, we do have those issues, but I understand what Attorney Imhotep is speaking to. Is majority not related to the example that I gave. So we have to be law abiding. One of the things that President Ross told me when I joined in 2018. So this is, you know, 2019, 2020 is coming in. We got all of the social justice, and I'm asking him, you know, and you know, social uplift, and I'm asking him, you know, hey, how do we help the political prisoners? You know, what is the way that Division 421 helps the political prisoners? He said, he said, the best way to help the political prisoners is to not become one. And we have to continue that. We can't, you know, I'm not gonna say we can't fight from behind bars, but it'll be more difficult for us to do this work if we're incarcerated. So that's another one of our responsibilities as diplomats, as representatives, as leaders of our race is we have to do what we have to do to maintain our freedom. But we can't help. It's more difficult for us to help if we're incarcerated. So we must know the laws. We must abide by the laws while we continue to fight for our own sovereign land where we can develop and enforce our own laws. Anyone have any comments in closing? We about an hour over. I will really try to do better next week. I thought we were on schedule, and we pretty much are, but it's just the deeper we go into the text, the more it brings back things that were mentioned earlier. So I try to make sure we have that complete connection. This is not something that I've mastered or memorized, so I'm learning it as well. And there's some things that some comments or ideas that Garvey touches on that I'm aware that, hey, wait a minute, that's not the first time he's mentioned, you know, having a respectful relationship with government officials. He talked about that, you know, in a previous lesson. So, you know, little things like that. Communism, you know, us staying away from communism. He definitely talked about that in lesson 2, I believe, leadership. We should not be considered communists, but so we're doing a great job. Everyone is doing a great job. Don't be intimidated by the exam. Everything that all of the questions that we ask come from the book, come from the presentations. I don't, you know, I'm not able to make up anything that's not in the text. I will add this year, I'm going to add a general brief description of everyone, to give a brief description of each of the lessons, lesson 1 through 22 in their own words. So, you know, 1 to 5 sentences, you know, 3 sentences is should be enough for each one. But any questions, comments before we close out? It's getting late. Got to get some rest. Again, great job, everyone. Next week, we will continue. We will have questions from lesson 10, economy, and the reading of lesson 11, titled man. Let me see. All right, we will close out. Sister Diane, are you there? Brother Art, you got a question?
Nah, I don't.
You want to do the honors of closing us out since you came off mute first?
Sure, okay.
Punishment. Everybody will come off mute, please. Put your black fist in the air. Repeat after
Yeah.
Brother Art.
And repeat after me. One God,
One God,
One God,
one aim,
one
one aim,
one destiny.
One
one
destiny.
destiny.
Africa,
Africa
Africa,
for the Africans.
for the
for
Africans,
the Africans,
Those at home
those
those at home,
and those abroad.
and
and
those
those abroad.
Race first, family.
Race
Race
first.
first,
Race
family.
first.
Have a great night.
Race first.